Following on from The Passionate Shepherd to His Love, this video will be looking at the second poem in the anthology, Sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare. So this poem was published alongside a collection of other poems, and this was all created in 1609, which makes it a little bit difficult for us to know when exactly this poem was published, but you should just use the date 1609. If you're not already familiar with a sonnet is 14 lines long. It's got a particular rhyme scheme, which we should be looking at later. And it's usually romantic in its content, which is something I need you to remember before we approach the poem. And if you don't already know, the number 130 just refers to the fact that it was the 130th poem out of the 154 that were created. So if you're an average reader and you really like Shakespeare, feel free to nose through the other 153. Moving on, I'm going to go through a little bit of context with you because I really think you should know what motivated Shakespeare to put quill to paper and write his sonnet. I just told you that sonnets are usually romantic in their content. Well, during the Renaissance, which was between the 14th and the 17th century, I can't breathe, hold on. So I think it's important for you to know some contextual features and understand what motivated Shakespeare to put his quill to paper. Well, I've told you that sonnets were usually romantic in their content. Well, during the Renaissance, which is between the 14th and the 17th century, for you historians out there, writers of sonnets went a step further. They went extreme and started using really exaggerative language. By that, I mean hyperbolic language. They went over the top to glorify how women looked. So an example of that I've got here, if you can see, is from Song of Solomon. It says that thy lips are like a thread of scarlet. It's saying that the woman's lips are so red. So it is probably good for you if you were during around that time and you had these beautiful poems written for you. But put yourself into Shakespeare's shoes. It's like being in the middle of Card Factory on Valentine's Day. It's over the top, isn't it? And he was swamped by these poems and he decided to write a satirical poem and mock all these conventions. So these types of over-the-top sonnets were called blazing sonnets, and he decided to write a sonnet that wasn't going to be like this. It decided to mock the way these sonnets wrote. So now let's have a little read of the poem. I know you're very excited for this. Before I do read it, I really encourage you to do this at home as well, because I think that you need to be having a real good grasp of the poem yourself too. To use the punctuation as well as your guide, know where to stop. It's not like normal prose and fiction. You need to know where to carry on because lines do run into each other, which is something we will look at later. So here we go. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun? If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet while I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound, I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground, and yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Right, so here's a little sum up of what that poem was about. So don't panic, it is a bit confusing at first, but let's have a little sum up of what it is all about. Sonnet 130 made fun of exaggerative hyperbolic language for those blazing sonnets I just referenced earlier. As we go through the poem, we are made to feel as if this woman, the mistress, is a bit ugly, that he's insulting her and that he doesn't really love her. But really, he's just being realistic about how she looks and what he really loves about her. He's saying that actually, by the end of it, she's just a unique person and unfortunately she's been lied to and misrepresented by all the over-the-top comparisons that have been made in blazing sonnets. So there's a real theme of honesty here, so we understand how genuine his love is and that we don't need these embellishments to express your love for someone. Right, to make things a little bit easy for you, I'm going to go through the poem line by line so you can digest it into some more manageable chunks. Here's the first line and the first impression we get of the poem. The very first word here is the first person possessive pronoun, my, and by that I mean that the speaker is showing that the woman belongs to her, the mistress belongs to him, sorry, not her. And that's a typical attitude in that time where women were seen as a sort of possession. Now it's careful here that this noun, you don't think that mistress means today's meaning of someone who's married or with a married man. It actually is a term of endearment. And if you translate this, it just means my love. He's saying, my love's eyes are nothing like the sun. So we've just learned from this that he loves someone, but then we're hit with this negative simile because he says her eyes are nothing like the sun instead of they are like the sun. And you may feel a little bit sorry for the woman at the beginning because he is really insulting her, but he's just being realistic. She hasn't got sun-filled eyes. And this very first poem confuses us a bit, and it's meant to shock you. It's stating and foregrounding that this poem isn't going to be like a blazing sonnet. Okay, so here's the second line. We've just learnt from the first line that she has pretty pale lips, and it's as if his camera is panned down to the next feature, which is her lips. Did I say pale lips?
It's okay.
Do that again. Okay, so here is the second line of the poem. From the first line, we've just learnt that she's got normal eyes, and then this next line moves on to compare her lips to coral. So it's as if his camera has panned down from the eyes to the next feature on her face, the lips. And here he says that her lips are nothing like the colour of coral, which you may think isn't very disastrous really, but at this time the colour red was usually associated with beauty and femininity. Just have a little pause of the video and go to the next poem that you should be looking at, which is on page 7, and have a look how many times the colour red's associated there for beauty. It all links. All these poems at this time thought red was a signal of someone's beauty and appearance. So we've got this intensifier here. He's saying coral is far more red. He's been 100% certain here that she has lips that definitely do not look like coral, which to be fair is true because coral has a pigment in it called carotenoid for you scientists out there as well. See, I'm cross-curriculum here. So it is realistic to think that you as a human being can't produce this pigment. No way could your lips be naturally this red. He's going on to analyse how over the top comparisons can be in poems. Next two sentences together, because they are quite structurally similar, you'll see that there's a foregrounded conjunction beginning both of them, that if, because it's preparing us for some sort of assumption to be made by the speaker. Not only that, but the sentences, they're as if they're broken into two chunks. You'll see that by the commas. The first chunk is the assumption of what the mistress should look like, and the second chunk is actually what she realistically looks like. Also, we've got here a metaphor in the second line I really want you to note here, because the word wires doesn't actually refer to literal wire. It's because back then in Shakespeare's time, if a woman had really light, beautiful hair, not like me, then she was told she had golden threaded wire hair. This is why it's referenced here. He's saying if hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. Well, if hair is wire, why has she got black wire? He's saying that actually she's still beautiful, but she's just got dark features as well. You also notice here that there's some sort of interrogative tone. Why then her breasts are done? It's conversational. It's as if we're having a conversation with the speaker here. So the first line is saying that if snow be white, why then her breasts are done? He's using the word snow because it's very, very strikingly white. It's saying women should have usually white skin, but her breasts are done. Done is a greyish brown colour. So we learn two things from this, that she's got quite tanned maybe skin, not really porcelain white skin, and she's got black hair as well. So far, we've learned that this woman, it's as if we've got a blank canvas and we've started to paint a picture here. We've learned that she's got normal eyes, she's got quite pale lips, she's got black wired hair, and she's got pretty normal skin, not really, really white skin. Next, we're moving on to the cheeks. If you see here, this comparison's happened over two lines. This compared the cheeks to roses over two, whereas previously the comparisons have happened over one. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun, one line. There's a change in structure through the poem now, it's becoming more detailed. These two sentences begin with the first person possessive pronoun. These next two lines compare the cheeks to roses. So far we've learnt that she's got pretty normal eyes, she's got pale lips, pretty dark skin, not really porcelain white skin, and black hair. Next we're moving on to the cheeks and what they look like in colour as well. If you notice, this comparison As the poem goes on, there's been lots of comparisons. This one happens across 2 lines instead of 1. The first line compared eyes and sun in 1 line. Now it's becoming more detailed. The writer's changed the structure of the poem. These lines begin with the first person pronoun I, so we know this is the speaker's point of view and it's his account of it. He's saying that he's seen roses blended, that's what damasked means, blended with that red and white colour. You can see that in the rose at the bottom there. He's seeing these roses, but, so we've got that foregrounded disjunction, we're ready for something negative, but he's not seeing that perfect blend of white skin and rosy cheeks as well. He's being realistic again, much like the coral. He's saying that it's over the top to expect a woman to have this perfect blend in her skin. Right, so we've got a similar comparison here. It's happening again across these 2 lines, but we've moved on. It's no longer physical features of the woman, it's actually her breathing now. We've moved on to more of an action here. The line starts with a foregrounded conjunction. Again, we've got these foregrounded things at the beginning happening, so we're anticipating something to follow. We're ready for the next comparison. Here, the speaker is comparing how she breathes out to the smell of perfume. You must be careful here. That word reeks doesn't have today's meaning, much like wires that we talked about before. Reeks actually means the physical action of breathing out. That meaning of smell didn't come out until after the poem was published. Here he is saying that in some perfumes there's more delight, he enjoys it more than the breath from which she breathes out. Which is again realistic to believe in, because if every time you breathe out you smelt of perfume, that would be pretty impressive, wouldn't it? So let's move on. Even further down the line, we're now definitely no longer talking about physical appearance. Here we're talking about her voice, again an action. This is the first time in the poem we have a very explicit compliment. He's really showing that he loves her here. It begins, I love to hear her speak. So we know from this, from that abstract noun love, that he likes listening to her. So maybe he does like having some conversations with her. Thank goodness, actually we know he does like her. But then wait, here we go again, yet. That disjunction there, we've got ready for some negativity. He says, I do like listening to her, but I know that music has a far more pleasing sound. He likes listening to music more than he likes listening to her speak. Think about it though, I think I would rather dance around to music than my own boyfriend's voice, to be fair. So that adjective pleasing is showing that he does enjoy listening to sound of music much more than her voice. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the poem. I hope you're still alive and you're listening. Here he's saying, I grant I never saw a goddess go. Got some alliteration there. It's alliteration of a plosive. I'll talk later about what that is, but it's really making it fierce and we totally believe what he's saying. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. Notice the commas, breaking that up, building up some pressure, so we're waiting to listen and read on. He's saying he's never seen a goddess. Well, that reference to a goddess is because at that time, lots of sonnets reference women to these subhuman beings. I mentioned before that sonnets were very over the top. Well, a very famous writer of sonnets was Petrarch. He was an Italian writer, and this is a line from his sonnet. It says, the way she walked was not the way of mortals, but of angelic forms. He's saying that this woman is subhuman. Really, what's happening here is Shakespeare is again breaking the stereotypes. It's over the top to think that a woman would look subhuman and angelic, because he says actually when she walks she treads on the ground. That intransitive verb is telling us that she just walks like any other human being, and more specifically she walks on the ground, not up in the air, high and mighty above us. Okay, so we're at the very last 2 lines of the poem. This is the rhyming couplet. By that I mean the very last 2 lines, the end words are rare and compare. They both rhyme and they create that sense of completion. The 2 lines together, they start with a conjunction and, followed by a contrastive verb yet and yet. It foregrounds that there's some sort of twist. We're ready for the twist. We're ready for some sort of shock factor. And yet, by heaven, he's vowing something here. He vows that his love, the woman, the mistress, is as unique as any. She's as rare as any other woman. But unfortunately, she's been lied to are misrepresented by all the false comparisons and metaphors and similes in the sonnets of that time. This is called a volta. You must use that technical terminology here because it's the shock. We've suddenly realised that all these comparisons weren't to attack her at all, weren't to insult her, it's actually to show that we shouldn't misrepresent women and we shouldn't glorify them so that they expect to look this way. At the beginning of the video, I said that sonnets had a particular rhyme scheme and a particular structure, so this is where we're going to look at it. From now on, I'm going to look at features of the cone, which if you are familiar with, I just mean I'm going to look at the form of the structure, some lexis, some imagery, some sound, some syntax as well, which is all really juicy information for you when you analyse these poems. Right, so with the structure, we've got an alternating rhyme scheme, which is AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF. So if you don't already know, that just means that sun is labelled A, and that the next line that rhymes with it is done, which is also labelled with A. That's typical of a sonnet. It alternates until we get to the rhyming couplet at the end, that volta. Remember, I used that word just before. That volta creates a sense of completion at the end. We know the poem is finished. And not only does it stand out by the way it rhymes, it stands out with the twist, the content that it has. Not only that, but it's got 14 lines. That's typical of a Shakespearean sonnet. You should usually find that when you are reading sonnets as well. And we've got enjambment, which is where the line carries on to the next line. An example of that you've got here. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. Here there's no punctuation to break that up. It carries the flow and the pace going for us. Most importantly, it's also got iambic pentameter. Don't be scared by what that means. I'll break it up for you. An iamb is an unstressed and stressed syllable. And an iambic pentameter is where you've got that 5 times. So it makes a duh noise as we go through. That's quite an interesting thing because people tend to think that that is a heartbeat rhythm, which would be funny because it is a sonnet, it is about love, and you've got that heartbeat rhythm as we go on. I think that maybe Shakespeare used all these structural features to make it look on the surface like a sonnet, but then as we uncover it, as we know, it isn't actually one. The content isn't usual like a blazing sonnet. Maybe that adds to the joke that he wanted to make it look like a sonnet when really it wasn't. How the poem is broke down, as you can see, I've got the first quatrain. Quatrain means 4 lines. Just think of quad bike, for instance, that's got 4 wheels on it. You've got the first quatrain, the second quatrain, and the third. That's where it's broken into 4 lines in each chunk. I can see that there's some sort of links between each one. The first quatrain talks about the eyes, the lips, the hair, and the breasts. It's all physical features, and the comparisons happen on 1 line, not on 2. Then the next quatrain compares her cheeks and the breath, but this happens over 2 lines. So we've got some sort of difference between them. And as we move on, quatrain 3 doesn't talk about physical features, it's more her actions and the way she is, like her breathing and the way she moves. And quatrain 3 differs massively to quatrain 2 and quatrain 1 because of the theme it has and because it's again using 2 lines, not like quatrain 1. Then, bang, we are hit with the rhyming couplet. That breaks that link that we've got between each of them. All these comparisons stop, and we've got the completion where we find out the shock factor in the poem, that really, he does love her. How sweet. Stay with me. Now I'm moving on to lexis. I just mean words. Because we've already visited quite a lot of them as I went through the lines, we're just going to discuss some other things that will be of importance to you. I've highlighted the first person possessive pronoun my. We saw it in the first line, but it's repeated throughout the poem 4 times. That could be used to reinforce that she belongs to him. And maybe that's why he was being defensive over her and why he had to write this poem, to stand up for her and for all those women out there that were lied to through these poems. On top of that, we've got that reference to snow here, that concrete noun. I think that he referenced to that because snow is really strikingly white. A lot of colours are used here so that we can paint that picture of her on our canvas. Also, snow is quite appealing to the eye, you can't deny that. So he's stating that really it's ridiculous to expect that your skin should look like snow. That's why he's used that concrete noun there. He could have used any other thing that was white. Also, because it is a sonnet, it does have some romantic content to it. We've got some words that contribute to this field of love. So we've got roses, perfumes, and we've got heaven. And for your task, you're going to try and find some others yourself as well. On top here, I found some words that you may not know the meaning of. So we visited the word dun, that's where it's a grey or brown colour. The wires as well, the golden thread. Damasked means a blend of mix of colours. Belied at the bottom just means that she was misrepresented and lied to. And reeks, you must remember, it doesn't mean that she stinks. It means that she's breathing out, okay? And all this has showed us a window into the history of the English language, that these words have different meanings in modern English, which is between 1500 and 1700. And the poem was written in 1609. So this is why it's got older meanings and not today's meanings. More information on lexes for you. Stay with me, promise, it'll be good and worth it. Right, so line 4, if hairs be wires, okay, I've told you wires means the golden thread. If you had really light hair, not like mine, you were told you had golden wired threaded hair. It was a compliment apparently. This happened a lot in other sonnets as well, where women were complimented for their golden hair. I've got an example here from Watson's poem in 1582. It says, hair yellow locks exceed the beaten gold. So you could use this to compare how Shakespeare is mocking poems like this, that reference to gold, okay? So maybe have a look at Thomas Watson, 1582, and have a little research on where other sonnets have looked at golden thread. Also, right, this is a little bit confusing, but I will break it down for you. It's something I've noted. Roses damasked. Okay, damasked meant that blend of colour. Damasked, okay? That's an adjective. It should usually go before the noun. So it should really be damasked roses, okay? Which I've put here. It should be damasked roses. But at that time, in modern English, it's 1609, it's not today. It was quite trendy for writers to actually shift that adjective and put it on the outside. That's what I mean by post-nominal. It's after the noun instead of before. It was quite a trendy thing to do, and Shakespeare's just showing off some of his writing skills here. The poem, if you haven't already realised now, and I'd be worried if you didn't, has a lot of comparisons using similes and metaphors because sonnets at that time used this writing skill. The very first line uses that clever negative simile. We've got the negator, nothing. So really stress, hold on, no, she doesn't have sun-splashed spectacular eyes. It shocks us from the very beginning. All the images that are created throughout the poem are about the woman. She is the star of the show, if you like to think of it that way. And that's because lots of sonnets use a woman as the whole subject of the poem. They broke her down into little physical bits. And just have a little look at Sonnet 20. That's from Shakespeare's poem as well. The very first line, a woman's face with nature's own hand painted. Much like the very first line, the woman's the subject of the poem. That's why we begin the poem stating that it will be about a woman. The images are created to make her come to life. I keep saying about this canvas, but it is that way. We begin to envision what she looks like. She's got the pale lips, the dark hair, and really she breaks the stereotypes that were created about women. That's why he uses all these metaphors to reject how women are meant to look like. Go Shakespeare, I like him for that. There's lots of physical features that are contrasted with real world things. So we've got coral, snow, wires and roses, so that we can compare quite clearly what she should look like as well. Okay, so you might feel a little bit scared by the sound things of the poem. And I know a lot of people forget this, but it's our friend sound. We should be referring to it in the poem. There is quite a lot of assonance in the poem, which is the repetition of the same vowel sound. So the very first line has that. My, eyes and like. That's that I sound. And I've put the little fancy phonetic transcription there. That's what that I sound should look like when you write it down. You don't have to write it like that, but I just thought it'd be good for you to know, don't worry. Alliteration. So alliteration is where this beginning initial sound is repeated. We see that here in grant, goddess, go. That's a repetition of the g sound. That's a plosive sound. Put this hand here, because at home you can test this. Put your hand in front of your mouth and say some plosives like p, d, g, and air hits your hand, and that's because you build up the air and release it. That's what a plosive is, and it creates quite a fierce sound, so we are made to believe this statement is true. He's really stressing that he's annoyed that people try to make out that women should look like goddesses as well. There's also some sibilants in the poem, like such and see, and some consonants. So this is where the consonants, they occur elsewhere in the word. They don't have to be at the beginning like the alliteration. So that S sound occurs in roses, so that's near the end, and cheeks near the end. So that's different to alliteration because it's not at the beginning. At the very end, we've got that couplet with the rhyming end words that creates some sort of completion in the poem. But also, look at the commas. The commas build up some sort of tension, so we're waiting for the big reveal, and yet, by heaven, we're all ears for the ending, basically. And if you look overall, I feel that this poem is quite a quick run-up and then a pitter-patter as we go on. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. There's a build-up and then a very fast ending. He goes through this bit quite slowly so that he can emphasise what the expectation should be, and then runs through really quickly what she is actually like. Syntax, yay! Brilliant, I love syntax. So syntax is sentences and structures as well. All the sentences are declarative, they're all statements, that's what type they are. He's stating, so we are sure that he's being true here. But don't be confused with this, there's also an interrogative tone. They're not interrogatives, because that would have a question mark at the end. There's a tone that's quite questioning. So for instance, why then her breasts are done? There's no question mark at the end, so it's not an interrogative sentence type, but it's got that interrogative tone. It makes it quite conversational. It's as if we're having a conversation with the speaker over dinner about this mistress. The first 4 lines I've grouped together using this to show that it's one complex sentence. We'll quickly race through all the comparisons. Then the sentences are broken into 2, because I feel like he needs that comparison to happen over 2 lines so he can use more detail. He's able to write into further depth about this, and also it makes the sonnet less stagnant and boring. He changes the pace, so we've had 1 lines to 2 here as well. Right, here's another juicy fact for you. So I used that damasked and roses before, reference to modern English time, 1500 to 1700. This sonnet does follow a typical subject-verb-object order, which is what English should follow. Your subject, your verb, and your object. Like, I like cake, and I do. So I is the subject, verb is like, and then cake is your object. But suddenly it changes. We don't have subject, verb, object here. See, I. It should be I see. It's not I see because in early modern English, which is that 1500 to 1700 time, writers were able to flip the order. They were able to go object and verb, then subject, okay, instead of subject, verb. So we got the verb, see, it's an action, and then the subject, I. They're able to play around with it. That's because here, there's negation, there's no. If there's a negative bit in the first bit of the clause, people are allowed to play around with the order. That's just another window into how writers wrote poems and sonnets and messed about with things, because at that time it wasn't very rigid how you were meant to write. So there we go. I've gone through everything I could possibly do for you with Sonnet 130. It's a brilliant poem and I really do hope you have a great grasp of it now. I've put some tasks on the blog for you to do that I'm sure you're very thrilled to be getting on with. So thank you very much for listening.